Hello and welcome to this month's Rights in Russia English interview. Today is March 27th, 2025, and we welcome the return of Jens Siegert, a German national and German journalist and political scientist who's lived in Moscow since 1993, where he worked initially as a freelance journalist and radio correspondent. From 1999 to 2015, Jens Siegert headed the Russia office of the Heinrich Böll Foundation. From 2016 to early 2021, he headed the EU project Public Diplomacy, EU and Russia at the Goethe-Institute in Moscow. Jens was also an advisor to the board of the Memorial Human Rights Organization until its closure in 2022. He is an expert on Russian domestic and foreign policies, relations between Russia and the EU and the West more generally. His particular interest is in the development of civil society in Russia. Jens has published numerous articles, as well as 3 recent books in German. 111 Reasons to Love Russia was published in 2018, and Russia in Principle, an Encounter in 22 Terms was published in 2021. His most recent book, Where is Russia Going? Scenarios for the Time After Putin, was published in October 2024. Congratulations on your new book, Jens, and welcome to Rights in Russia. We last spoke to you in May 2024, and a great deal has and continues to change since then.
Thank you. Thank you for the congratulations, and thank you for the invitation to speak again here.
Your latest book is about Russia after Putin, and it's in German, right?
Yes.
And an interesting topic, Russia after Putin. As we think about this, Putin is now 73, and I'd like to begin by asking you, which do you think is more likely, that he'll remain in power until he dies, like Stalin or Brezhnev, or that at some point he'll be removed from power, like Khrushchev or Gorbachev?
My guess is that a very powerful man in the US, President Trump, is working on the former. He's working on letting or giving Putin an even better chance than he had before to stay in office until he dies. Trump already gave Putin something or a lot that he can, and he is already claiming a victory against Ukraine, against the West, not against Ukraine, against the West. Something Putin can claim, and he claims it, that this war was worth it to do, and even the many dead Russian soldiers, though nobody in Russia speaks about that and speaks about the number, that they were worth to do so. And that he is the one who brought Russia finally back onto par with the US. There has been one superpower left after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and now he can claim, and he claims it. There is another superpower again, and this is Russia, and this helps him very, very much inside to secure his power within Russia.
You talk about a Russian public opinion in your book, and I'd like to ask how easy it is to really measure public opinion in a country where the traditional media is controlled by the state and the state punishes opposition views. And if you could maybe speak to what the primary medium for getting news is in Russia, and how effective is the government control of that medium in manufacturing public opinion?
No, as in every authoritarian country, regime, there are some difficulties to get to know what people really think. But those who are conducting surveys, especially in Russia, these are our colleagues from the Levada Center. They managed to develop some instruments get to know, to get a little bit closer to what people really think, even under this circumstances. They are working very much not only with asking people by phone, they are meeting people in person, which is a very big difference. And they are building focus groups where a number of people, 10 to 15 people, are discussing things. And therefrom, you can get a deeper knowledge or a deeper impression on what people really think. If you're looking to the numbers they get, then we have about 20% who are really hardcore followers of Putin and the war against Ukraine. About 20% are against it, maybe a little bit less, and 60% are in between. They don't really want to engage. They finally support Putin. They finally are in favor of the war, but their opinion might be changed very quickly if the overall situation changes. It's not their opinion is not very how to say it's not very hard. This refers especially to opinion about foreign and international politics, opinions about domestic politics, about things which are happening in everyday life of people. There they have very concrete meanings, opinions, very concrete opinions. And it is not so easy to influence, to have an influence on that. But the main thing, and that we know from polls as well, the main source of getting information for Russians still is the television, is the TV, and this is totally controlled by the Kremlin. Nothing in TV will come up which is not under the control of the Kremlin. This is for a lot of time, this is propaganda pure, nothing else. But people can get alternative informations. There is no great internet wall like in China, in Russia, until now. The authorities are claiming that they could cut Russia off from the worldwide network and create a Russian internet, but they didn't. Yeah, there are a lot of websites blocked now by the watchdog Roskomnadzor. But if you have a VPN channel, then you can easily have access. But in every time in such a situation, you have to want to get alternative informations, and most people don't want it. Levada tells us that about 25% of all internet users are using VPN channels. So they can, but it seems not enough to change things within Russia.
Do you have any sense of how Russians, and particularly human rights and other civil society actors, view the current political situation in the United States and Trump's support of Putin, strong support of Putin?
The majority is very much in favor of that. They are glad to get this. They are glad to get this acknowledgement as a superpower as well. This has been really an insult. Many people in Russia are feeling that Obama then, I think it was back in 2008, called Russia a regional power. I suppose there are two quotes from US politicians, which all Russians know. This is one of them. The second is a quote of Zbigniew Brzezinski, the
Hmm.
security advisor of President
Hmm.
Carter, who said, without Ukraine, Russia isn't an empire anymore. So,
Okay.
uh, and this Brzezinski is now quoted quite often. He's quoted that this war in Ukraine is a war of the West against Russia, because the West wanted to catch Ukraine from Russia so that Russia
Hmm.
can't remain an empire anymore. People who are against Putin and against the war, so this 20% I talked
Yeah.
about, they are as maybe, yeah, not glad as we are what Trump is doing. Yeah, they see that their possibilities to get rid of Putin, to get rid of the authoritarian regime they are living in, get rid of the repressions,
Hmm.
they are fading even more away than they have been before.
And they have been, right? Thinking about the 1990s, we know that during that time, Russia, there were kind of two phases. On the one hand, it was a time of new freedoms and reform, uh, particularly for civil society. But from a different perspective, it was a time of chaos and decline. Um, we know what Putin thinks about that period, but how about the Russian public? Is there a divide at all among social groups or generations, with some having a positive view of those years and others viewing the 1990s generally negatively?
Uh, I don't know whether one can tell this a divide, but there are
Hmm.
different opinions on the
Hmm.
1990s. There is quite a lot. I think a big majority is thinking that the 1990s were bad for Russia in an economical way, and it was a decline of Russia and decline of Russian state. Uh, but in a recent poll, not from Levada, but from the FIOM pollster, which is very close to the state, to the Kremlin,
Hmm.
about a third of all people said that they gained more from the 1990s, from
Hmm.
the perestroika
Uh-huh.
and the time after
Uh-huh.
that, than they lost.
Uh-huh.
And this is something, this is a figure which is going up, and it's even more going
Ah.
up if you're looking to young people up to 35 years. There are about of 37 or 38%
Hmm.
who think so. So this is not so. It's you have to differentiate a bit. It very
Yeah.
much depends
Hmm.
on what people think is more important. Most people in Russia think that economic well-being and social security is the most important thing,
Hmm.
and that the state has to provide it. And
Hmm.
the Russian state in the 1990s failed with that.
Hmm.
There is no doubt about that. A minority thinks that freedom and political freedom and rights are much more important, or at least as important as social rights and social
Hmm.
well-being. And those people are more likely to think positive or more positive
Hmm.
about the 1990s.
Uh-huh. The development of the Putin regime has been accompanied by wars. First of all, the internal war against Chechnya, then the war against Georgia, the seizure of Crimea, and then the full-scale invasion of the rest of Ukraine. How far would you say war has come to be an essential element of the Putin regime?
It has been an essential element from the beginning.
Mm.
Uh, Putin's popularity Putin's popularity first when he became a prime minister, almost nobody in Russia did know him. Uh, his rating was, I think, less than 10%. And then he began the second war against Chechnya, against the Chechens. And this went up very, very quickly, so
Mhm.
that he, in the end, won the presidential elections in 2000 in the first round. And this is because in a way, he took on a trauma which is still quite virulent in Russia. The trauma that Russia might fall apart as the Soviet Union fall apart. And Chechnya, the Chechen independence movement and the two Chechen wars are a symbol of that. And for many people in Russia, Putin fixed that. He got rid of this problem. He solved this problem. This even works now in the war against Ukraine because Putin is framing this war as an existential war. Existential war not against Ukraine, but an existential war against Russia, against the West. A West which is, in Putin's words, inherently Russophobic, and which the aim of the West is to destroy Russia. And he tells the Russian people that if we don't win this war, if we don't win, Russia will decrease to exist.
And is this a framing, or does he believe this? Was this his main motivation for the Ukraine invasion?
I don't know. I can't look into his head. I think there are, as in all of us, there are many different things going on in his head. He for sure is a Russian imperialist. He made this clear many times. For sure, he thinks that Ukrainians are not an own people, but are only some aberration of Russians. Yeah, like maybe like in Germany, Bavarians, or I don't know, in the UK, the Scots. In the end, most of the English think that they are their own as well. The Scots do think different, yeah, but Ukrainians think different as well. So I think there are many different motivations in his head, and they together they are so toxic. They compose the toxic mix we see now.
Do you think that in addition to keeping Russia intact, that Putin has aims for regaining the countries of the Soviet Union? Does he see a second Soviet Union as a goal?
That's difficult to tell, but at least Ukraine and Belarus are, in his mind, part of a greater Russia. And then there are claims which are coming from Russian nationalists all the time, and he seems to be one about the northern part of Kazakhstan, for example, or the eastern part of Estonia. And some go further to the former Soviet Union as well. Whether this is really an aim or more something like, oh, it would be good, and now first we deal with Ukraine and this thing, and then we'll see. That's very, very difficult to tell. If looking back to Putin's track record, in this 25 years since he became president, then he's rather not a strategist which has a clear aim, sees a clear end game, but he's doing his things step by step. He's using opportunities to gain. This, which what might be in his head as something he wanted to achieve.
His career background was in the KGB, and under Yeltsin, he came to head the FSB. Could you say what role the FSB plays today in Russia? And is it the same as that played by the KGB in Soviet times? And to what extent does the existence of the FSB restrict the chances for democratic development after Putin?
Yeah, that's difficult to tell. I don't think that the FSB is so powerful like the KGB in the Soviet
Mm-hmm,
Union. Does not control everyday life as that has been the case in the Soviet Union. There is a lot of spaces for little freedoms left in Russia. People are not so scared. Even towards the state as they have been in the Soviet
mm-hmm,
Union. People are talking quite openly. Uh, it's not in public, but in private, there are
mm-hmm,
no restraints on that. There are no whisperers, as Orlando Figes put it in one of
mm-hmm,
his books. This is a different case. And then the FSB is one of a couple of power centers which Putin set up. There is the Rosguardia, for example, which is more like a private army for Putin.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, and there are different other power centers. I suppose it's more the policy of Putin that no one within this system he built up has too much power. Even the FSB, where he comes
mm-hmm,
from, because he controls within this system. He has in a way, he has built a system of check and balances,
mm-hmm.
so that in the end, everything is coming together in his office, and he is the one who can decide finally
Mm-hmm.
what is happening.
You talk about little freedoms that are greater than Soviet times, and we know that this has a lot to do with civil society, the development of civil society, or the freedom to express what you like, whether it's the name of a street or a particular candidate. Um, Putin has after the time of the 90s when there was awakening of civil society, Putin has largely deprived Russians of the experience of kind of coming together, a kind of a collective civil society. To what extent do you think this is true, and will this hamper possible future democratic change in Russia after Putin?
Yes, today there is open civil society activities which are directed on changing policy is not possible at all. There is no policy. There's no politics, not policy. There are no politics in Russia anymore. Meaning the public struggle about power.
Mm-hmm,
This is forbidden, but this is a rather new development. This happened after the 24th of February in 2022.
mm-hmm,
Until this time, there has been some possibilities left. So Putin, the 25 years of Putin are. um uh, we can describe them as uh, limiting political and civil society freedoms step by step. And for a long time, especially civil society organizations, better, for example, than politicians in political parties, were resisting and were uh, keeping their spaces of freedom, or as they told it among each other, the islands of freedom
mm-hmm,
within this closing Russian society or this closing political field. But this really ended now, and it might be, yes, I agree, this might be a problem at some time when hopefully Russia again opens up. But how much a problem, how big a problem this will be, will depend on how long this will take. We have had 70 years of Soviet Union, and now we have 3 years of this full-fledged dictatorship of Putin. And okay, even before there have been some propaganda, there have been indoctrination of especially young people in schools, but all this is going on full is going went on full scale only 3 years ago. So let's see how long this will take, and then we will know how much damage Putin was able to do.
Uh-huh. For many years, people have argued about how the West should act in relation to Russia, not least in terms of supporting democratic reforms. In the 1990s and in the early years under Putin, do you think the West did the right things, or did it make mistakes?
It did the right thing, and it did a lot of mistakes. So, you know, that was a task. Such a big country, to have two reforms at the same time, to totally change the economics and to totally change the political societal system. And I don't know something similar in the recent history. Even in Germany and in Japan after World War II, it was only the political system, society. They have had market economies before the war and before their dictatorships. And I think it wasn't possible to do this without making mistakes. And then I think we have to tell mistakes from things which went wrong, but are not really mistakes. For example, one of the things the West very often is accused is the NATO. That Eastern and Central European states joined the NATO, and this is what in Russia is what Russia is claiming about very much. But I don't see how this could have not happened. I don't see how NATO could have said to Poland, to the Czech Republic, to the Baltic states, no, you have to stay within the orbit of Russia, because that would have meant what not to become members of NATO. It would have meant that the West acknowledges that Russia has the right and has still this sphere of influence, and that this country would have to be on the mercy of Russia and of the Russian development. So what the West maybe did not right in this regard was to tell Russia that this was not targeted against Russia.
Mm-hmm.
It was against Russia. It was against Russia's past as an empire. There was no trust in Russia in these countries. That Russia might not come back, and as we see today, this was right not to trust Russia, and trust has to be earned. And Russians wanted to get trust as a gift. This does not work.
Many people, particularly in the U.S. and certainly in Europe, say that the most important thing to do to help a future democratic Russia is to support Ukraine. What's your view
Yeah,
on that issue?
that's totally right. That's the main thing we can do. The main thing we can do is to support Ukraine as good as we can. And I say more, until now we didn't. We didn't our best. And this maybe this sounds a little bit over optimistic now, especially in regard to the Trump administration and their course in regarding Ukraine. But I think the European countries, including the UK and Canada, and maybe some other countries, have to step up. If they don't do so, then they will soon see that Russia will come after them as well.
It seems that a gulf has opened between the U.S. and Europe on these questions, and so could you just say a little bit about Trump's closeness to Russia and what impact do you think that relationship will have in terms of Russia's war against Ukraine and geopolitics in general?
Geopolitics in general, I think Article 5 of the NATO is dead. And in this this is a very rare case where I'm in agreement with the Russian establishment. They think so as well, and they will test this. I'm very sure that they now convinced that NATO is dead, or the main instrument of NATO is dead. This Article 5. But to be sure, you have to test it. There will be something like those green guys, like in Crimea, in eastern Estonia, or in eastern Latvia, or something like this. I'm very sure about that, and they will test how far can they go. And Europeans have to be ready for that. There is a lot of talk in Europe, in the EU, together with the UK, that we should do so. But until now, as I already said, they didn't do the best they can, and we have to see. We are now in a new world where again great powers are having spheres of influence, and Russia will try to widen its zone of influence as far as it is possible. This is a part of Russian security thinking. The more kilometers they have between Moscow and the frontier of their sphere of influences, the better.
So for my last question, I'd like to go back to your book, in where you argue that the future of Russia will be determined domestically rather than from outside forces. And you point to three possible variants post after Putin. One, further repression, two, a time of troubles, and three, a democratic opening. How easy is it to be optimistic that Russia will opt for the third of these possibilities, the democratic opening?
Unfortunately, not very easy. If I have to be honest, I think the first variants are the more likely ones, at least at the moment. But on the other way, perestroika was not the most the most likely outcome then in Soviet times after first Andropov and then his Chernenko died. Yeah, Gorbachev was not the logical choice. Everybody foresee for that, and all those all that what then followed by Gorbachev's decisions wasn't made to destroy the Soviet Union. It was made to preserve the Soviet Union. In my opinion, by the way, the Soviet Union was destroyed by the KGB, who tried to putsch against Gorbachev in August 91, because they ended the last possibility to get a new treaty to preserve the Soviet Union. This scenario has to come from within, and I see it only in case that at least a part of the recent political elite will come to the conclusion that this confrontation with the West, the war against Ukraine, and everything around is bad for Russia. As far as we know, there are such people, even in the Kremlin or around the Kremlin today, who think that the war is a mistake. That these people will get a chance to change the country from within again. Russia or Putin shouldn't win this war. Unfortunately, Trump at the moment is working very hard on handing him a victory, handing him over a victory in this war.
Well, many thanks, Jens Siegert, for this insightful conversation based on your many years in Russia and your work with civil society. We look forward to reading more about your new book and possibly an English translation. So I hope somebody's working on that, your publisher maybe.
I hope so too. And thank you very much for having me.
Well, it was great that you were able to give your time to this. So thanks again, and hope to see you again on Rights in Russia as the situation changes, hopefully for the better.
We'll see. At the moment, there is not very much hope for that.
Yes, right. I tend to agree, but things can change. So
yeah,
we'll be working on it on both sides.
That's the base of my book, that things can change, and they can change not only to the worse, but there is a Russian joke. The pessimist said that it can't get worse, and the optimist tells him, it can.